The movie Skyfall is of the action movie genre. It has the running time of 2 hours 24 minutes and it's directed by Sam Mendes by Matthew Kronk. One quick disclaimer is that there will be spoilers and plot reveals within this movie, so I do recommend either watching the movie before watching this to help you understand it better. In the beginning of the movie, it's opened with, I guess you could say, the character James Bond going through a hallway, which is very significant within the plot because most James Bond movies start off with a gun pointed and it's pointing towards the screen. He is walking through a dark hallway and it pans to a body and chair. This is Agent Ronson. This is already quite different compared to the first movie because there's already a death within the first 2 minutes. Now the thing is that's a bit complicated because this is confirmed within 25 minutes 40 seconds within the movie, as Bond asks if Ronson lives and he does not. This ends up leading to Bond having to leave him for the meds to come 5 minutes later, and then he gets picked up by Eve in a Land Rover, and he ends up chasing Patrice in a black SUV. This chase is very high speed and it goes through market streets, and this involves destruction of markets and people's personal items, very big stunts on bikes, motorbikes and stuff, jumping through glass windows through Istanbul. There is a continuation of long shots across the roof. It shows the scale and the danger that he is going through to chase this man, and it is made apparent that there is some sort of list at danger here being lost, and it has very, very important information that the MI6 cannot lose. This chase leads to them jumping off a bridge and then onto a top of a train, and he chases Patrice onto the moving train, pursuing him, and then getting into a JCB truck. The thing is, he ends up running out of ammo in his gun, so he has to use the JCB truck to hit him with it. But however, James gets injured in this process, as in this image here. This means that he is partially shot in the shoulder, so he is already injured. And as they fight on the train riding across it, they're coming towards a stop towards the entrance of the train. This then results in James Bond's, well, not really quote unquote death, because he ends up surviving this, and he ends up going, like, I guess you could say, undercover or not really alive for many months. Now, how are the codes and conventions different? The codes and conventions allow for more adjustment in the advancement of technology. For example, the gadgets used in Bad Boys far more set back compared to the gadgets in toys now. The cars have machine guns in the headlights and palms readers for the gun handles. It means only Bond can shoot the gun. Now the thing is, Bond is a very old giant, I guess you could put it in that way. So he isn't really used to all this future. The thing is, he ends up using a knife towards the end of the movie to kill Silver. So there is more death within the first 6 minutes in the movie. This is more modern as it keeps the audience attention for longer in the opening scene. It's very important for the first impressions of the movie. There is more destruction of property and public areas, as the movie had a $200 million budget compared to the $19 million that Bad Boys had. So they can destroy more cars, have more bigger explosions, and then have more spectacles in the movie. In terms of the fighting scenes, I guess they're more elaborate because they can use wires and stuff wires and equipment, allows more fluid stunts. Fighting scenes are very special. They learn to do endurance training, and they can start to influence martial arts into the shots. This is very special because not most movies in the 90s didn't really have much martial arts. In the other movie I analysed, it's not really that close-up fights. It's mostly long-distance shooting. So I guess they have to be committed to learning the style in this movie, which is very good for the actors. To be honest, it's the same sort of code conventions: a clearly defined hero, very rarely female, clearly defined villain, violence, weapons used, serious injury or death of major, minor or characters, destruction of city, extended fighting, physical feats or stunts, rescuing victims and frantic chases. The narrative. How has it changed? The narrative somehow is still the same because they use a conventional linear narrative, and this is obviously in relation to Robert McKee's 3-act formula in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. In addition, the opening scene is a cool idea, They bring a state of disequilibrium. This is when an incident occurs that would alter the narrative in some way, and this requires the characters in the plot to fix the problem for a happy and peaceful ending. The narrative of the movie is slow, as we don't get much background information on the characters, as it is important to the story. So we need to know who the person is hacking MI6. Obviously, this is very supported by an image on the screen called "Remember Your Sins." The narratives in some way are like each other because they have many plot holes that can be fixed with some ideas from the viewer. Some of the plot holes are large, some are small, and even though they don't have any impact on the narrative, some on the movie, some of the larger plot holes in the movie can affect the lifespan of the characters. Like in one scene, Bond had the opportunity to kill Silver, but we did not. We don't know why he didn't do this, but it's possible that the movie could have been cut very, very short. On the other hand, the movie narratives can be different in some ways, as the plot of the movie is a bit easier to understand, as the dangers of the bomb attacks are made clear by M, as explains what happens to the agent that is now Silver. This helps us understand the anger that he's focusing as it's all on M. The characters. First of all, I'll start off with the men. Now, the male characters, they're very interesting, as in most Bond films, they're pretty much the same. But when you apply props character theory to some of the characters, you can go into many roles. So, there is James Bond, or 007. In most Bond movies, he's often represented as the silent, peerless spy, which means he always works by himself. He is a notorious womanizer and a strong masculine icon. He has good nerves, especially under stress, so he can stay calm and collected. Bond can also be represented as a male dominant in the movie, and as he has some authority over some people. This is key as it shows him his need to lead. This can lead to some conflict between the two. This character is very similar to Mike in Bad Boys. He is always in charge, but he does work well with partner, so he is not a solo flyer. So he can be different in some ways. In addition, Mike does not tend to sleep around, even though we don't see, we can tell based on his personality and traits, and obviously as he has many fast cars. In relation to props character theory, he can be the hero in the movie. There is Q. Q is an interesting character, as he can be the helper and the donor. He is the two roles because he assists Bond by giving him info on the mission and supplies him with the high-tech gadgets, as he is the quartermaster. I guess you could say that these gadgets are more like the magical objects in the list. Sometimes he does have a humorous side, as when he introduces himself inside the art gallery, he says that I hazard that I can do more damage on my laptop sitting in my pyjamas before my first cup of Earl Grey than you can do a year in the field. This is good as it shows the hostility of his nerdiness, but also allowing a bond to be made between him and 007, as they shake hands with a smile. Q has good taste in art, as he was schooled well in MIT, so it's clever that Sam Mendes, the director, had made this scene in an art gallery and so strategically placed art behind over their shoulders. Q can be somewhat compared to the character Julie, as she gets Bad Boys in Film the Drug Case. There is Mallory. Initially, Mallory is seen as the secondary villain. M sees Mallory as someone against her, and Bond thinks he may be using Eve to spy on him. However, as the movie progresses, we see that Mallory is revealed to be on their side as he helps the characters throughout the mission. He ends up becoming the new M, as the old M does end up dying towards the end of the movie. This is different because normally there's a bit of female authority, but this has now been replaced with a new male authority, which has been very common over the last 20-30 years of Bond movies. Lastly, there's Raoul Silva. He is the main villain on props character theory. He's only introduced a quarter away through the movie, so we don't end up knowing much about him. But the thing is, he planned being captured by the MI6, and he sort of knew what jail cell they used, so he knew how to escape, and he had a plan. And the thing is, we end up finding, this is the point where we end up finding out that he was an agent before, and M betrayed him, so he had to swallow one of those pills, but it did not kill him, so only debilitating him, as his jaw was all messed up with rotten teeth. Now, you see, in this Bond movie, he is the stereotypical madman. Some of the traits we see in the movie is the staring eyes, the sick smile, I guess you would say the lack of guilt for being unreasonable and illogical. For example, Silver orders his men to shoot up Bond's childhood home and his precious Aston Martin, because he has a very precious love for cars. He has no reason to destroy them, but he did. He probably did this to hurt Bond personally. Most importantly, there is a murderous constant threat and violence. So I guess he can be compared to the bad boys villain. Silver is a lot more serious and will do anything to get revenge on M, even if Bond gets in the way. The characters. How are the females different? Now, in terms of the female characters, they're pretty much somewhat different, I think. Firstly, there is Eve Moneypenny. She was introduced as a rookie agent who accidentally shoots Bond during the pre-title sequence, which is the beginning. After a mid-film dalliance with 007 in Macau, Moneypenny decides she isn't cut out for field work. As Skyfall ends, she accepts the position as M's personal assistant as a desk job, starting to like where the character was before. She is a surprisingly strong character as she confronts the normal stereotypes that the older character was. Compared to the 1962 version, she is the person that either flirts with Bond or sleeps with Bond. In this movie, she does not sleep with Bond, she only teases a relationship, I guess. Now, she can be labelled as the helper as she assists Bond in the beginning and gives him results on the shrapnel from the special bullet that shot him in the shoulder from Patrice. Now, there's M. M is an odd character because most of the M's in the past movies have been men, not female roles, so they have no power over men. But the thing is, she's in charge of the Q branch, and this means that she is female authority over 007. Obviously, Bond's need to be power can't obviously be controlled. So, during the beginning scene, she would rather not lose an agent than lose a list with a bunch of undercover agents. This puts stress over her, as you can tell from the bulldog in when she was writing the obituary of 007. I guess it acts as a British symbolism because it's when she's writing the obituary, the bulldog's facing her. So I guess you could say it's sort of saying that the whole of the whole of England is watching over her, saying that if she's doing something wrong. Now, when she was with Bond, it was looking away, saying that she was looking out for England, but now it's looking at her. So yeah, bit of English representation there. She could be compared to Alison Sinclair. She's the captain in Bad Boys. She only shows up towards the beginning of the movie, but then she doesn't show up much else. There is Severine. We don't see her much, only for the fact that she is bait for Bond to not really kill her, but test his aim on a shot glass on her head, as obviously the injury that he succumbed made his, I guess, performance in the field a bit less, so his shot was a bit off. Her role in the movie, I guess you could say, is the Bond girl. This is quite stereotypical for the James Bond movies. That means that she is the one that sleeps with him, or she's the one that he seduces. Her only role is really to take him to the island, and then obviously, as she betrayed Silver because he told him where he was, she is then, I guess, tested and put against a wall, and that's where he shoots her. She's seen as the stripper/sex object. In my opinion, she's a pretty pointless plot device to assist Bond. She only gets there. I was pretty surprised to see that when she was killed, Bond had, I guess you'd say, a pretty cold, emotionless face, which means he did not care for her properly. He was only there for the deed, really. In my eyes, I put her as the princess and helper. It's the only one I thought that would work, because it's hard to say as a small role, as she does help 007 in some ways. Now, in terms of the audio, it can be different and similar. The sound of the movie is clever, as they tend to use it for more diegetic sound and less of the non-diegetic sound. This can be used to create many atmospheres and convey many emotions, which allows the audience to focus on the dialogue, as it may be important to the plot. Throughout the opening scene, they use non-diegetic sound, which consists of much music to create of action and excitement. This is used well to open a character or deaths. when a character is killed, the music tends to stop to a halt so you can hear their final breath, or the person that shot them. However, when M dies, there is just a sound of slight wind, so we can focus on the last words of M, and the gradual decline of her breathing, I guess, becomes less frequent. As the final breath is taken, I guess, the melancholy music gradually comes back in quite softly, so with Bond's face in the shot. Now, Mendes is very clever because he uses a lack of diegetic sound to manipulate and change our emotions to make us feel sympathy for Bond, as technically M was family to her. In terms of modern expectations for the score of the movie, it has had to adapt to the technology that they have available now in the 2000s, post-2000s. Some of the technology that was used for this music was called digital sampling technology. This has since changed since the 1990s and has a higher quality for instruments and a sound adjustment. You can change the dB, you can change the sound and stuff. In Skyfall, they use Foley, which is the sounds in the studio with many objects like rocks or glass shattering. So, I guess you could say that it's quite creative when they made the music. The main score for the movie was of the orchestral pop genre. This accompanies the film in a way that Mendes said to Adele during an interview, saying that it had soulful, haunting and evocative quality. Also, when recording, said they had 77-piece orchestra, which is pretty interesting because it allows a lot of detail in the song, so you can hear all the emotions. In comparison with Bad Boys, they seem to use different sound for the villain's entrance as in Bad Boys, because they used a low and dark tone for the character, but with Silver, he seems to be very calm and collected and quite silent, but he also talks quite a bit to keep the continuity of editing quite high. There is a lack of diegetic sound, and I guess because you can hear the servers whirling in the background, it allows for a tense, surprisingly calm atmosphere. Now, the movie ends with the last fight between Silver's men and Bond teaming up with his old housekeeper, who he brought him up after his parents died at quite a young age. His name is Kincaid. They teamed up with M as well. As you can tell, they are quite close. So they use quite positive songs for this, as there is a montage of them setting traps within the house, like when she shattered some glass here, and then she's putting it into the light bulbs as they exploded. They only had 2 guns because after Bond disappeared, they cleared out all the gun stores. They also prepare and put boards on the windows so no one can see through. But Bond finds his dad's old dynamite, which I guess he uses as a last resort. This all leads to the battle to Silver's crew raiding the house and using all the traps up. So, and then obviously he uses a helicopter to shoot down the sides of the house. Emma's injured, but she gets shot in the shoulder. So, and she has to exit through the tunnel that Bond used to sit in there for days after his mother passed. So, towards the point, once she exited the cave, Silver realised that she had escaped and she had gone very far, so she asked the helicopter to go further away before destroying Bond's car, which he's very angry about. So he exits the hallway he set the dynamite, and the house exploded. He said, "Why, I never really liked this place anyway." This leads to a massive explosion in the bottom right with the fuse, and I guess you could say that this is quite sad because it's destroying his home, but I guess he never really enjoyed it personally. Bond dies for almost the bloody 2nd time, so he fights someone underneath the lake, underneath the ice, as Silver thinks he's dead again, but he's not. M confronts Silver, and Silver tries to get M to shoot herself. You could tell he's pretty insane. Now, this is the point where Silver dies, because Bond gets a knife and throws it in his back. He succumbs to his wounds. And sadly, M is in his arms, which is this bottom left photo. And the last words here would, "I did get one thing right." I guess it ends on a good note. Now, after this, you end up bringing back to Bond in London. And Sam Mendes shot this very well because he aligned all of the best buildings in London in one shot. So you have Big Ben, you have the Shard somewhere in the background, you have the Common, and it's very cool because it's more symbolism. And this is also backed up when I guess you say Eve is then introduced as Eve Moneypenny towards the end of the movie, which we didn't know because we were just calling her by Eve. She gives him, as M changed her will, to give Bond the bulldog. And there's more symbolism with this because the bulldog is now facing towards Bond, because now, I guess you say, there's no pressure, but England is looking up to Bond to help save them. In the second film, I guess it's aimed at a very similar audience, because it's more futuristic. They have to adapt it to a more modern audience, as there's a lot more young people watching these sort of movies. The stunts are more eccentric. They're made bigger. There's high pitched music, and there's a lot more futuristic gadgets. Thank you for watching my analysis. Have a good day.